This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Now the back Zurhaar, he backs it, he kicks it, all the floor from Zurhaar. This is the speed of McKercher, 3 bounces down the wing, he keeps going, 4 bounces. Joining the chorus, the Can't Lose Kangas, AFLW Premiers.
Hello and welcome back once again to North Pod. We are here after a win. It is a rare occasion, and it's a weird one because I think, obviously we won. That's fantastic. We love to win. Doesn't happen very often. It's our second win for the year. And so for the most part, it's a great feeling. But there is that sense of, we would have liked to be a bit more convincing than we were, I guess. We did the minimum. Last week I talked about the fact that we simply had to win this game, and we did that, but we certainly didn't do much more than that. It was pretty unconvincing, but I guess, look, at this point in the season and this point in our trajectory, I think we just have to be happy that we're able to get across the line. We did it the hard way. Haven't won at the MCG since 2017, so that's nice. That being said, we play about one game a year there, so it's not as though it's a 20-game streak or anything like that. It's probably more like 10. And just nice to get the win. I think it was super important that we got another win before the midway point of the season to go in with 2.5, and maybe, who knows, if we can cause an upset next week, 3.5 wins, I think it's not a good result, but I think it's an acceptable result based on, I guess, my expectations. I'll be hoping for a few more wins in the second half of the year, no doubt. Anyway, let's jump in and talk all about this game. So, Roo Review, let's start with team selection, and not a lot to talk about there because the same 23 were attacking this game, just a change in the sub. So Dersma in as the sub and Bailey Scott in as the full-time or into the first 22. I think I appreciate backing in the team from last week. It was a really good effort against Brisbane last week, despite not quite being able to get across the line. So I think I have to respect the fact that we've backed in the 22. You can see that Will Phil, Will Dawson were potential inclusions. They were in the emergency list, but I think holistically you're pretty happy if you have a really good performance against the running premiers and you've got no injuries or suspensions. I think it makes sense to go in with an unchanged squad for the most part and just rotate that sub position, because you don't want, I think Bailey Scott had played it twice in a row. I think to play it 3 times in a row is not ideal. So I thought a smart decision there to rotate, and not a lot really to discuss. So we go to the game result here, and look, it's a win. Richmond 11-8, 74, North Melbourne 12-6, 78. So a 4-point win, and I think we'll touch on the game in its entirety. But besides that first quarter, it was a really, really tight game. The second quarter, the Tigers got on top and kicked a few goals, and then I think in the second half there was only 1 point between us. I think we were leading at halftime by 5 points, three-quarter time 5 points, and then the final siren 4 points. So a really, really tight tussle after the first quarter, and I guess the Tigs were on top in the second. In terms of how we set up, I mean, she's moved forward for a big period of the game. I think that's probably us anticipating that there's going to be more of the ball forward in this game, given we're playing a side that's not quite as strong. So I didn't mind that as a move. But boy, it was a shaky way to start the game. The ball really lived inside Richmond's half for the first sort of 8 or 9 minutes. A lot of stoppages, which kept going on throughout the game. It was a massive stoppage game, heaps of ball up. So you'll see in the hit-out count when we get to Xerri that it was really stoppage heavy and congested game. And I wasn't super pleased with the way we started. It gave the impression that it was going to be a tough outing, and I guess, again, except for the first quarter, it was a pretty tough outing. I just spoke about Xerri. His tap work was what got us the first goal. It was a really nice tap down. Ended up that Finn O'Sullivan was able to get the clearance or receive the clearance, hit Zurhaar over the back, and Zurhaar was able to kick a goal. Jack Darling put on a really nice block that allowed that to happen. And then I guess opened the floodgates for us a little bit. We were able to kick 4 of the first 5 goals of the game, get out of the blocks, be up by 23 at quarter time, which was really pleasing. We were looking really promising after that. I guess in the second part of that first quarter, Jack Darling again created a contest and LDU was able to kick a goal from that. We saw some of our really fast play was, I think, almost surprising our forwards. We weren't ready for the ball to be coming in so hot and, with so much time. So a few times they were caught out or it went over their heads where I thought actually the forwards leading pattern probably wasn't great. It was really nice to get those quick plays through the middle, resulting in some goals again. LDU ran to space and again who found Cam Zurhaar. It was a gut run from LDU. He ran from essentially the half-back flank to the half-forward flank, received the ball, and then kicked it over the back to Zurhaar. He had a really nice game, Cam. I'll talk about him. Finbar Maley won a holding the ball about 50 or 45 metres out. A really nice tackle. He had 2 of those in the game. Went back and kicked it. It was a strange old kick. It was a pretty low ball, but it made the distance pretty comfortably in the end. So nice for him to hit the scoreboard in the first quarter. And I thought, like I said, we played some really promising footy in that first quarter. We were unfortunately a little bit slack at the end of the first quarter. Tom Powell was caught in the goal square and just wasn't quite able to fist one through for a behind, so Richmond kicked a late goal there. But I think you can see in general, Richmond they're not quite up to the standard of a lot of the sides that we've played this year. Our quick hands were creating space for us, which is not something that we're used to. Generally speaking, we're just hand passing ourselves into more trouble, but we're able to see ourselves create some chains and get some handballs going that allowed us to release, and that's what allowed us, I guess, to kick those 4 or 5 goals in the first quarter and really get on top. Unfortunately, in the second quarter, that was our worst quarter for the game. It's one of those regressions. Normally, our second quarter's been our best all year, but in this instance, it was the first quarter was our best. It was actually the first quarter one for the entire year that we've won, so that was really nice. Unfortunately, weren't able to back it up in the second quarter. Went down by about 3 goals or so in this one. We had a couple of bad turnovers. Hardiman had a bad kick, and he's allowed to as a young player, but unfortunately turned it over in a bad spot, which led to a Sam Layla goal. Boy, he can play, and you'd expect that. He's the number 1 pick from last year. I absolutely would have been selecting him if he'd fallen to us. As it was, it didn't happen, but yeah, he kicked a goal from a shocking Hardiman kick. Unfortunately, we saw McKercher miss a tackle on Hugo Ralsmith, who kicked an unbelievable goal. Just like I said, broke the McKercher tackle and then kind of made 3 different decisions before he decided to dribble kick it through. I think we made it a little bit easier than we should have, but again, I think I'll touch on McKercher later on, but that's the sort of stuff that we really need to improve on. We can't afford to be giving away tackles like that. It's a simple thing. Just get Ralsmith over the line and get a ball in. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Much like the start of the first quarter, the ball spent a lot of time in the Tigers' forward half, which was allowing them to pile the pressure on and eventually kick the goals. We saw Sam Layla take a really nice big pack mark in the goal square. He was able to kick his second for the quarter, and then again we saw Toby Pink, who I thought had a really nice game holistically, but had a bad moment, had an intercept or received the ball deep inside 50, was under pressure, hand passed it beautifully to Seth Campbell. It was a beautiful assist. Unfortunately, just the wrong team. I think probably his hand pass was impacted by some pressure. It wasn't, I don't think, a directly bad decision. I think it was a skill error brought on by the pressure, but Seth Campbell went in for a goal. He played a really nice game, Seth Campbell, and that actually got the Tigers all square, which was really, really troubling given the way that we played the first quarter. Thank goodness Cam Zurhaar was able to kick a goal late, had a really nice over-the-back kick from Caleb Daniel. He'd shanked one coming out of defence not long before that, so it was nice at least he was able to make up for that with a really nice goal assist. Similar to Ralph Smith, it was one of those ones where he was about to kick it, changed his mind, took a couple more steps, then kicked it long, and Cam Zurhaar took a really nice contested mark in the goal square. So we went into halftime 5 points up, but you certainly weren't happy going into halftime because the first quarter had been so promising and then the second quarter really didn't show what we were able to do. So it was a nervous halftime. It was one where you wondered, are we going to throw this game away? And I guess, we threatened to do that for the entire second half. It was not a pleasant second half to watch as a supporter, but I think the pleasing part is we were able to win ugly. So, like I mentioned, it was an absolute deadlock in the third quarter. Both teams kicked a couple of goals. The Tigers were able to kick the first after Bailey Scott lost his feet on the wing. He had just a shocking game, Bailey Scott. Got subbed out midway through the third quarter. Zane Duursma came on for him, but just zero impact and not strong enough over the ball a couple of times. This was probably the worst one where he just got, like I said, lost his feet, but he got out-bodied and out-muscled several times, so that was disappointing. I thought Richmond really got their tails up here. They were playing the same way that we were playing in the first quarter, just taking on through the corridor. Our pressure wasn't able to, I guess, be sustained. And, they were looking super dangerous. They kept just taking it on. And invariably, that meant that the ball, again, spent a fair bit of time in their half of the ground. Just when you thought Richmond were going to go on top, we took a couple of really nice kicks through the middle of the ground, found Larky out the back, and were able to kick a goal. So I think that's the pleasing thing, is that we didn't allow Richmond to get too much momentum going. We did slow them down, and then the counter-attacks were really nice. Similarly, just again, when you thought Richmond were getting on top, Luke McDonald punts one in long, Jake Costandy gets out the back, kicks a goal, and there's a bit of a common theme there. We hit a lot of goals where we got out the back of the contest. So we were able to kick some goals in this quarter, despite, I think, probably Richmond having more of the play. And then again, a shocking error. Aiden Core and Luke McDonald just got cooked out the back, cost us a goal. Core not strong enough over the ball, and then McDonald didn't bring it in, lock it in, and that allowed Richmond to just get out the back. And I think that might have been Seth Campbell kicking a goal. So yeah, like I said, 2 or 3 goals each for the game, for the quarter rather. Cam Zurhaar kicked another one. He's just so good when he's crumbing and not having to be a marking forward. He can, I think, play a more natural game at ground level and also take those marks out the back. Essentially, really, to be honest, playing a very similar role to the one that Paul Curtis plays when he's in the side. So, maybe there's something to that. Obviously, we've got the 3 tools with Maley, Darling and Larky, and then Zurhaar doesn't have to play tall, but I think also having Curtis out has meant that more of the ball has been finding its way to Zurhaar. So, yeah, similar to the second quarter, he kicked one late in the third to, I guess, keep us in touch. And then the last quarter, it was just a real wrestling match. Every time you thought the Tigers were going to get a run on, we were able to slow them down. If Cam Zurhaar was able to keep his fend-offs down just a little bit lower, he would have kicked 6 or 7 goals. He gave away 2 free kicks for high fend-offs. One of them would have been an absolute gimme goal if he'd been able to get away with it. A really nice game from Cam, and threatened to win the game for us a couple of times in the last quarter. Toby Pink had the first of his 2 massive moments in the last quarter. Had a really nice run-down tackle on the wing, which, again, I guess resulted in a turnover for us, and he was able to launch it back our direction. It was partly due to the fact that Richmond had pushed so far up that player just didn't have any options to kick to, but the fact that Pink was able to mow him down was fantastic. Wardlaw laid a really, really nice bump on Nick Vlaston to set up Larky for inside 50 for a goal, which was really nice. That was a good steadier for us in that moment. I think a couple of comments. LDU, for me, had a really nice game, but needs to get a left foot, or needs to go to his left side more often. He had one moment coming out of centre clearance where if he just turned to his right and therefore was lining up to kick on his left, he had all the time in the world, but he took this massive arc to get onto his right foot, which just the best players in the competition don't need to do that. It's really predictable, and that was a frustration of mine because we had such good clearance work. We won so many of the clearances, but examples like that meant that we weren't quite able to necessarily take advantage of our domination in that area. A couple of really big midfield wins allowed us to break up the Tigers' handball chains and stop them from kicking those daring goals. I think that for me was, whilst you can feel bad or I guess nervous and a bit yuck about the fact that we weren't able to kick away and secure the game, the fact that we were able to stop and repel Richmond through the middle part of that last quarter, I think was really pleasing. Whereas in that second quarter, they just got a hold of us. We weren't able to stop them. Finbar Maley, another holding the ball win on the wing this time, massive. It was actually really funny. He finished the tackle and then called the holding the ball himself, did the actions. It was a bit reminiscent of Clarko calling it a couple of years ago now in Perth. It was similar vibes. I think you've got to be careful doing that, but the fact that he got away with it, I think was really nice. And then, just the nervousness of the last few moments of the game. Jack Darling got ragdolled in the ruck and Tom Lynch kicks a goal, and all of a sudden, it's a 1-goal game. Simpkin had a shocking down the line kick. I don't know what he was doing. He had a couple of short options that he ignored, and then he just kicked it straight to Camden McIntosh. It's almost like he has a quota of bad kicks, and normally it's his kicks inside 50, but that was a shocking moment. Maybe 5-6 minutes to go, and just giving the ball up to Richmond in that moment was totally unnecessary. I understand he's probably playing with a lot of emotion. The boys were wearing black armbands in recognition of his nan dying, so like a big game for him, and probably running on a lot of emotion. I thought he had some really nice moments, but just again, it's mistakes and silly avoidable mistakes like that I think are super frustrating. Couple of let-offs from Richmond. They missed a couple of shots in that last quarter, or opportunities that I thought a better team probably would have put away. And I thought we really, whilst there was a lot of talk about the fact that we'd done some scenario training during the week, I thought we really shut and closed our ball movement down far too early. We were essentially trying to run down the clock with 6 or 7 minutes to go, which is just too long. You've got to take the game on longer than that to get yourselves up the ground. We just had it stuck in our defensive half for far too long in that last quarter. Finally, about 45 seconds to go, Richmond launched inside 50, and Toby Pink takes a quintessential intercept contested mark, pushed Tom Lynch out of the way, fair and square, pushed him to the side, took the mark, and then launched up the wing, which closed the game. So 2 massive moments for Toby Pink in that last quarter, and we get up by 4 points. It was not a pleasant game to watch by any stretch. Like I mentioned, a lot of stoppages, but a win is a win at this point of the year. And I think it was just such a relief is probably the biggest emotion for me. I wasn't happy or ecstatic or anything like that. It's just relief that you're able to beat one of these bottom 2 sides. West Coast actually beaten St Kilda as I'm recording this, so now we're without a winless side. So I think super important to get the win, put a bit of distance between us and West Coast, and then hopefully we can leapfrog Richmond before the season's over. And who knows, maybe a few more, like Melbourne and Port Adelaide are pretty low down on the ladder as well. So there's going to be opportunities for us to move up. It's just whether or not we can win enough games. Even Sydney, Carlton, St Kilda, they're only on 4 wins, so we've got 2.5 at the moment. It's going to take at least 2 to leapfrog some of them, and you'd think probably 3 or 4, because I'd find it hard to believe that even one of those sides is going to go through the rest of the season without a win. Anyway, we chalk up the win here. We've got 1 more game to go before our little bye and our mid-season refresher. Just good to get that relieving win. A pretty easy one for story of the game. It was a game of repeated stoppages, congestion, a lot of tackling, a lot of pressure, and that's from both sides. I think part of it is probably we don't have heaps of game breakers, either of us. LDU is one that can do that, but a lot of his good work was done in pretty close and tight in this game. So both sides are probably going in with a defends first attitude and making sure that they're not going to concede 120 points. And I think also, like I said, the skill level contributes. So in terms of to give you a sense of how many stoppages, the hitouts was North Melbourne 54 and Richmond 53. So there were at least 107 stoppages throughout the game, probably more, because every now and then there'll be one where there isn't a hitout. So a lot of stoppages, several repeat stoppages throughout the game and throughout each quarter. Really, there wasn't a section of the game that was free flowing for longer than a couple of minutes. And I think for us, the fact that we were able to win clearances 54-33 says that we should have won this game a lot earlier and by a much more comfortable margin. Winning clearance by 21 says you're getting there first, but you're winning contested footy, and you should be getting the ball launched into your half of the ground and locking it in. Unfortunately, we just weren't able to do that. We actually lost the inside 50 battle by 4. So our clearances certainly were not all high quality. They were not necessarily clearances that allowed our mids or our forwards the best opportunity. And we've seen this time and time again this year. I think we are really good at getting our hands on the footy and getting that first possession or two. It's what we're doing with it after that is still a concern. This wasn't one where I thought we were doing complete dump kicks. It was more often that we were just clearing it generally in our direction. Like there were several where Xerri was just punching it forwards 15 metres. I don't know if the statisticians call that a clearance or if it needs to be an actual possession, but one way or another, like even if it's not, like it's the same vibe. Like our possessions or our clearances were moving the ball our direction, but not launching inside 50s and then keep getting it locked in there. It wasn't. We just weren't able to convert that, and I guess potentially that's the next phase of our midfield development, finding those players on the outside that can become the distributors, or having LDU and Simpkin and Luke Parker and George Wardlaw be able to deliver it to players up the ground with a little bit more effectiveness. So look, that I think sums up the game for us. We dominated clearance but weren't able to convert that into territory, because it certainly felt as though the ball spent more time in Richmond's half of the ground, and they had more inside 50s, like I mentioned. In terms of, again, a really congested game, both sides 92 tackles. So for some context, our team average is about 59 a game. So essentially 1.5 times our average tackles in a game. Richmond, even less, they average 54 a game. So a huge amount of tackles, which you'd expect in a high stoppage game. Obviously, those things are going to have to go together. And I think the stat that probably speaks to the way that the game was played, Richmond had 22 tackles inside forward 50 to our 6. So a lot of stoppages and repeated stoppages in their half of the ground, but they just weren't able often enough to convert that into goals. And that probably sounds a little bit familiar if you're a North Melbourne fan. I thought LDU and Xerri were the two difference makers for us in the middle. Without them, we lose this game pretty comfortably. Whichever team was able to get into their half would dominate territory for extended periods. And I thought LDU and Xerri were the two that were getting it going our way more often than not. They were fantastic in general. I certainly think that Xerri won the ruck battle, but it wasn't a domination. I thought Nankervis was also pretty strong as a result of that. He was not far behind Xerri in the hit-outs department. And yeah, I think for me, it's a game that we should have converted those clearances into more scoring opportunities, but the fact that we were able to stop an opposition side from doing as they please and shutting their game down, I think is the positive we can take out of it. We saw plenty of turnovers from us as well. That allowed Richmond more opportunities. We've seen that pretty regularly over the past 5 or 6 years. We are a turnover-heavy team. I mentioned that Jai Simpkin kicked down the line, but there was certainly some other skill errors. Caleb Daniel with a shocker, Riley Hardin with a shocker, and then there's just those turnovers that are more forced errors that aren't as glaring, but it comes back to our ability to retain the footy, which is, I think, a bit of a concern for us holistically speaking. We do just tend to give up the footy too often and too frequently. So, look. The positives from that aspect is we absolutely smashed them in clearance and we're dominating that area. We think we have a stronger midfield group, and I think that was franked by that performance. But we've got to find a way, and I've said this several times this year, to make that a more effective part of our game, to get more, I guess, value for money from our clearances, because to lose the inside 50 count with the clearances so lopsided is pretty concerning. Shinboner of the week time, and I mentioned him during Rule Review. I think it has to go to Toby Pink. Just those two absolutely massive moments in the last quarter, alongside what I thought, I mentioned that one error that he made in the second quarter. I thought he played a really nice game. He spent a lot of time on Tom Lynch, who I think probably kicked one goal, if I recall, so certainly shut him down for the most part. He was rotated through. Like we do seem to have a pretty loose policy with the sorts of swaps that we do in our back half, but I thought potentially it's the game from Toby Pink that says, hey, could he be a longer-term option? Now, I'm certainly not convinced based off this one performance, but those two big moments and the way that he was able to pretty consistently compete in the air, I thought was fantastic. Like I mentioned, the rundown tackle early in the last quarter and a really nice intercept mark, contested mark no less, in the last minute of the game to to stop Richmond's last launch. For a fringe player, someone who's not cemented his spot in the side, I thought those moments in this game in particular was fantastic. And, sure, Tom Lynch is older. He's had a few injuries of late. He's not in career best form by any stretch, but he's still no slouch. And for Toby Pink to, I think, definitely win that contest with him across the duration of the game is a fantastic result. So that is Shinboner stuff. I think there's no doubt about that he's a worthy winner. The other one I was thinking about was Finbar Maley for his two big holding the ball tackles, but I think that's the classic. They stand out because he's a taller player. You don't expect that from him. Toby Pink, similar, he did that with his rundown tackle, but he also did an amazing job of that intercept mark, which is part of his role. So holistically across the game, I thought Toby Pink's moments were probably bigger, and as a result, I've given him Shinboner of the week. I've also given him one vote. He could have even got 2 votes, to be honest. I'll talk about him here just since I'm touching on him. 12 disposals, 6 marks, 1 of them contested, 7 intercepts, and like I said, I just thought he had a fantastic game, probably his best game for the club, I would think. So gave him 1 vote. Let's go to the other votes here. I just couldn't find anyone for the 4 votes. There was no one that I thought had an absolute game-winning performance or an absolutely phenomenal game-winning performance. So I've gone down to 3, and it was a toss-up here. I've given 3 to Cam Zurhaar. It's a low-possession game, only the 9 disposals, but kicked 4 goals, 4 marks, 2 of them contested, had another goal assist, a couple of inside 50s, and like I mentioned, would have had 6 if his high fend-offs were, just 30 centimetres lower, or not even, maybe 10 centimetres lower. I thought just took every opportunity, attacked the contest hard every time. Just a really nice performance playing as that medium forward, crumbing off the 3 tools and getting out the back using his agility, his pace, his strength, and could not ask for anything more from Cam Zurhaar in this game. It was a sort of game that I guess makes you thankful that we've signed him long term. You just want to see this kind of game more often. I think this year he's been a pretty low possession player or low impact with his possessions player, but he's managed to find the scoreboard most weeks, which is, the main part of his job. So, yeah, I thought it was potentially his best performance for the year because of his impact on the game. The 4 goals, obviously, in a relatively low-scoring game is massive. We only scored 12 goals, so he's scored a third of them. I couldn't go past him for the 3. Got a couple of plays here with the 2 votes. Tristan Xerri, I mentioned his ruck work, 19 disposals, 52 hit-outs, 10 of those to advantage, 11 clearances, 11 tackles, 4 inside 50s. It was an extremely high stoppage game, so that does give him more opportunity for clearances and for hit-outs, but I just thought it was a game that suited him to the T. Many of his hit-outs gained us 20 or 30 metres just by clearing that congestion and punching it forward. I thought he had a couple of really nice tap-outs down to our players' advantage. Like I mentioned, he set up our first goal with a really nice tap. I still do want to see him take a few more marks, just the 1 mark for the game, and that's pretty familiar territory for him. It's been a knock on him for a while, but I think he's back in his bag at the moment. He's ragdolling players. He's back to the kind of form that we saw him at his peak last year, the last couple of weeks. So super impressed with his game. I was tossing up whether to give him 3 votes as well, but I just thought, like I mentioned, need a mark, and his numbers were just a little bit inflated because of the amount of ball-ups we had. So the 2 votes for him, and the other player with the 2 votes, LDU, 27 disposals, kicked 1 goal, 1, 3 marks, 5 tackles, 7 clearances, had a goal assist. And I mentioned him alongside Xerri in story of the game. Just super impactful in congestion, made his touches count, generally speaking, had his typical burst away, and I thought defended pretty well as well. Had a couple of, like I mentioned, 5 tackles and corralled pretty nicely. He wasn't just a one-way runner. Would like to see him get on his left foot, like I mentioned, but again, sort of similar to Xerri. That's nothing new. It's just a predictability thing. When he reels around and takes several seconds to do so, it gives teams a lot of time to set up. It means that he's only really got half the ground to kick to, and it results in predictable kicks. So that's an area that he can add on. But I thought his stoppage and congestion work was really nice, and he was definitely our best midfielder throughout the afternoon. And then the other 1 vote. So I mentioned I've given Toby Pink 1 vote. I thought Jack Darling played his role beautifully. 18 disposals, 2 goals, 5 marks, 1 of those contested, 3 tackles, 4 clearances when he went into the ruck. Not a lot of hit-outs, only a couple of hit-outs, but was able to grab it out of the ruck a few times and kick it away. Just thought he was a fantastic lead-up option throughout the game. Kicked a couple of goals, but I thought it was his lead-up work and sort of his work off the ball that was potentially more impressive. Didn't really get out-marked, which is super important. You don't want those easy marks, intercept marks from defenders, and I thought he was either putting on a bit of a block for a teammate or he was bringing the ball down to ground level for Cam Zurhaar and those types to pounce. So I thought he was fantastic. Just that one mistake with allowing Tom Lynch an easy stoppage goal in the last quarter. Besides that, I thought he played a really nice, consistent game. So 1 vote for Jackie Darling. And the 2 goals does mean that he's averaging about a goal a game, just over, I think, a goal a game, which is a nice return for someone. We weren't necessarily expecting him to come in and be leading the Coleman, and he's not doing that, but I do think holistically he's been a positive, and particularly I thought his last few weeks have been a bit quiet. So the fact that he was able to actually kick a couple and find a bit of the footy this week was promising. Dylan Stephens, just another, I've got to put my hand up and say he's not one that I thought was going to make it. And he might not long term, but I think since he's come into the side this year, he's been really consistent. 18 disposals, 450 metres gained. Nothing flash, but just held his shape. Played a really nice wing game and, generally made the right call. So couldn't complain about his game. I thought another performance where he's played his role perfectly and, allows us, I guess, some flexibility on that wing because we certainly thought coming into the year that was going to be an issue for us. Bailey Scott's disappeared, seemingly. I'm going to talk about him soon, but Dylan Stephens has made one of those wings his own this year, and I think at this stage he's locked into it. The other 2 vote getters, Toby McKercher, I thought had a really interesting game. 22 disposals, kicked a goal, 4 marks, 10 tackles, 4 clearances, had a goal assist. One of his better games at accumulating the footy. It's often a knock on him is that he doesn't find enough of it to do a lot of damage, but I thought this was a game where he actually found himself around the footy a lot more. And then 10 tackles says that he was, not just an outside player. He was trying to do some hard work on the inside as well. Ironically, it's his tackling that I think needs to improve as well. Like I mentioned, the fact that Hugo Ralph-Smith was able to break a tackle, that's been a consistent thing for him, that he's just not quite hard enough at the contest at times. I thought for the most part this game was a step in the right direction, but there's still those moments. There was a moment that he could have shepherded, and he sort of went for the handball receive instead, which wasn't there. So it's just around him making sure that he's playing, I guess, a selfless role, because I think sometimes he does get stuck in that he's a star player, he needs to make the move kind of mindset, and he's just not the star player at the moment. He may well grow into that kind of player for us, but not yet. Kicked a really nice goal early on. It was a good snap on his left boot in that first quarter, and I think for him it was a good game, but it's for me, I'm looking at going, here are the things I'd like to see a little bit more of. And honestly, I think he's a bit lucky. I think there's been times throughout the early part of this year where I wouldn't have been surprised if he was dropped. So good to see him taking advantage for the most part of that faith that's been had in him. And then the last vote getter, Caleb Daniel, also a vote, 25 disposals, a goal assist, 425 odd metres gained. Just did his distributing role the best that he has in a while, I thought. Did have that one shank, like all of our players. He sort of allow him one howler a game because, most of our players do it. It's a grubby kick along the ground in the central part of the defensive 50, so it was a shocker. But I think that aside, it was successful. I mentioned he had that really nice goal assist to Zurhaar out the back, and I thought he played a safer game. He was kicking to contest when it made sense to. He was looking for options when it made sense to. Couldn't knock his game. I thought played his role and was deserving of the 1 vote. So just recapping the votes for this game, Cam Zurhaar 3, 2 to Xerri and LDU, and then 1s to Darling, Stephens, Pink, McKercher, and Caleb Daniel. So in terms of the podium standings, nearly at the halfway point of the year, and Tristan Xerri's taken the lead. He's out to 13 votes ahead of Harry Sheasel on 12, and LDU's back there on 10. So the podium right now is the same podium in different positions to last year. But not far behind, Paul Curtis on 9, Simpkin and Parker on 8, Powell, Larkey, McDonald and Zurhaar on 7. So a nice spread there, and Xerri, I think, after a slightly slower start to the year, is now on top after some pretty convincing performances of late. Sheasel was close to a vote for this game, but I just didn't think quite had the impact that I would like him to in the forward half. So he remains on 12 votes, Sheasel, and then Xerri on 13, LDU on 10 is the podium. Just a reminder here to please support the show. Thank you so much to those people that do support the show by sharing it or following and subscribing where you can. So you can subscribe on your chosen podcast service, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all that jazz. Get involved with my social accounts, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, those sorts of things, at NorthPod Show. And if you would like to support the show in an additional way, you can find the Buy Me a Coffee link. It's buymeacoffee.com/NorthPod Show. Thank you so much to everyone who listens and who shares the show with North Melbourne fans. It's a great community, and I really appreciate everyone that listens in. Kanga clipboard. Let's talk through some stray thoughts as we start to get to the end of this game review. I think for me, something watching the game that's super noticeable, and it's not just this game, it's probably all of this season. Our bottom contingent of players are going to need to improve for our floor to rise in terms of our level of performance. If you think about this game, like Bailey Scott and Zane Dersma, they were the two that were either subbed on or subbed off. Collectively, just gave us nothing. You know, Zane Dersma had a quarter and a half and had one touch. Aiden Cord did not have a good game and looks to be on the outskirts of the side at the moment. I thought he had a pretty poor performance, particularly for a player that, you know, should be a leader. I'd back him in to perform better, but you know, it wasn't his best game. I think Jacob Constanti probably just needs to get involved a little bit more. 1 goal, 7 touches, 2 tackles is probably not quite enough from your small pressure forward. The 1 goal I'm happy with, but he either needs to be finding a little bit more of the footy or tackling a little bit more. Finbar Maley, you know, he's 3 games in, so I'm not criticising him, but you know, he's obviously got room for growth in his game. He can tackle, he can mark. I've still got question marks over his kicking, but you know, I guess it speaks to the point I'm trying to make here is, you know, we've definitely got some growth potential in these bottom 4 or 5 players in our 23. And I think Clarko will no doubt keep fiddling with the magnets to try and find a way to get the best out of everyone playing a successful role. I think Dylan Stephens is a perfect example of that. It's not that he's playing a different position, like wing is his position, but I think it's pretty obvious that he's being asked to do some different things, or he's being instructed to do some different things this year to last year. And it's working really well for him. He's probably playing a bit more of a in the middle part of the ground. I think last year he tried to play a lot of time sort of back half of the wing, trying to do that rebounding job from defensive 50, whereas I think this year I've seen a lot more of him getting the footy on centre wing or through the middle part of the ground and being that link, which has been far more successful for him. If we look at Bailey Scott, on the other hand, he just seems lost at the moment. He does not know where to position himself. He's not giving us that run and drive that we saw him do, not last year, but the 2 years prior, he had fantastic years playing off that wing. Last year, I think he spent a lot of time playing off half-back. I don't know if that's damaged or impacted his confidence, or he just looks a bit of a shell of himself at the moment, Bailey Scott, and potentially playing as the sub the last few weeks hasn't helped his confidence either. So, look, I think for me, it's promising that we have that potential. It's not as though, you know, we've got no room for growth. You would certainly hope that we do, and we definitely do, but yeah, I think the bottom 3 to 4 to 5 players every week, we just need to find a way to optimize what we're going to get out of their games. You know, it's not going to be everyone getting 25 touches. I think Finbar Maley is a great example of that. He's not going to be a 25 possession player, but I think if he's able to get himself to be a 2 or 3 goal game, and you know, 5 or 6 marks a game as opposed to his output right now, I think that'd put us in a really good position. I don't even know if he's going to play when Paul Curtis comes back into the side. That's another question. But holistically speaking, I think we do need to get a little bit more out of our bottom contingent. George Wardlaw is one that I want to discuss. I thought he was phenomenal in moments. He had a really big moment, bumped, who was it? Nick Vlosten off the ball and was able to give the hand pass off to someone who kicked it on to Nick Larkey to kick a goal in that last quarter. And there were moments where he threatened to take the game apart with his impact. He, not doing anything unexpected. We know how he plays now. He's explosive. He attacks the footy. He's really hard at it. He was doing all of that and looking flashy. It's just he's not quite able to do it long enough in games. His stat sheet kind of speaks to that. 14 touches, 10 tackles, 4 clearances. He's impactful when he's near it. He looks dangerous. He just needs to be able to do it for longer. I'm really hoping to see him kind of explode post the bye. Because we know he's had a bit of an injury-interrupted year. When we drafted him, there was some question marks over his fitness and his body's ability to stay healthy. I think we're kind of seeing the consequences of that now because his fitness is just not quite there. He really struggles to run out the games and have the same impact consistently throughout the game. He's explosive, but it's that ability to get to contest after contest after contest. So again, this is another room for growth for us. I thought he had some fantastic moments, but that's the reason that he was missed from the voting is he's just not quite able to insert himself into enough moments right now where I think he needs to be. So it's a good problem to have because I think he can definitely improve that, and it will improve naturally the more he plays. It's just about keeping him on the park, I guess, so that he can see that natural growth. I think another thing to come out of this game was that the fact that we just need to find some more avenues to goal. I know it sounds like I've got a lot of things we can work on here, but it's because, in this game, I think playing Richmond, we were able to get away with a bit. So a lot of our goals were at the back, and that was either from stoppage or a turnover higher up the ground. A lot of those, I guess you'd call opportunistic, or they're goals that come from situational awareness and from opportunistic plays, I guess. We're not scoring often enough from intentional lead-up scoring chains. That's still eluding us. So for me, I think that's what's gonna have to change for us to be a middle of the ladder kind of team. We've got to be able to chip the ball up the ground more intentionally, bite off that 45-degree angle kick inside that opens up the game, and then hit Larkey or Zurhaar or Paul Curtis on the lead more often. It's so infrequent that we're able to do that. I know, scoring from a kick out, it's a once or twice a game thing, but we need to be able to generate scores from, a free kick on the wing and have it not be this out the back, over the back of the pack crumbing goal. You want to be able to score that way. You just you need to have way more avenues to goal, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So against the better sides, we're going to get less and less of those easier opportunistic goals. You need your offense to beat their defense one-on-one more often. So I thought when we did take the game on through the middle of the ground, more often than not, we were able to make something happen. You want to see that. But again, I think Richmond's defensive setup and just the players they've got in their lineup did allow us a bit more freedom than we've had, playing Port Adelaide, for example. So yeah, I'd just like to see us keep developing some different avenues to goal so that when we're playing a stronger side, we're able to create more opportunities and not, go long stretches of the game without scoring, because I think potentially that's another one of the reasons why this game was so difficult to watch, where there were some scoring droughts for us. Think of that second quarter and then patches in the second half where we just weren't able to get the ball, enough speed on the ball and enough precision with our kicking. And again, this is all stuff that we've heard so many times, but unfortunately these things haven't been resolved yet. So for me, that's something that I'd like to see improve. And then I guess just a bit of a question, really, thinking about the personnel on our side and the defensive setup for next week in terms of who we go in with. Collingwood are a smaller forward line. Neither Membry or Myercheck, who are their sort of two key pillars down there, with Mason Cox sort of sometimes heading down there as well. Neither of them at all. They're both under 195. I think Membry might be 188. He plays a lot taller than he actually is. So it does give us an opportunity, or I guess some reason to maybe play a little smaller Obviously, Chom's going to play. You couldn't drop Pink after this performance. So it's that Aiden Core spot where you go, all right, do we play him? Do we play Griffin Logue? Do we play Matt Whitlock? Do we play someone that's a bit more flexible in their position? If Jackson Archer was fit, I'd almost say let's take Core out and play Jackson Archer and then have Chom and Pink play those taller roles. I thought that Chom was okay in this game. He had a couple of nice intercept marks and had a lot of spoils. He was able to come over and make an impact on several contests. So, it's weighing up. Do you really want to manipulate situations so that he is able to get to be third man up, or do you want to try and coach him to play one-on-one because that's something that he really needs to develop? Logue is not setting the world on fire this year. I'd only be happy bringing Whitlock in if we were going to keep him in for a couple of games in a row. I thought it was a bit rough having him just come in for the one game earlier in the year and then having go back out. So, look, it's just food for thought, I guess. We're not flushed for really good first choice key defenders, but we do have lots of taller options down there and certainly lots of medium options. So Josh Goder is one that I'm looking forward to seeing back in the side at some point. Potentially we'll go a little smaller when he comes back. I guess just something to consider because Collingwood doesn't really have that big hulk of a forward, which I think in theory is great for us because we don't really have that big hulk of a defender that can play a one-on-one game. But yeah, well, I guess I'm just interested to see how we match up. We've played pretty well in this game. You wouldn't expect anyone's going to be dropped because they had a poor game. It's probably more around, or from the back line I'm talking about. It's more that, I think there's an opportunity to try something different with Collingwood's makeup down there. And lastly, it's around Arden Street. I'll touch on the VFL. We had another close, tight win there, 62-60. So a really tight game. Similarly, it was a hold-on job. The Tigers in the VFL were surging home late. So 2-point winners. And similar to the AFL, it was a hold-on for dear life kind of situation. Cooper Harvey just continues to kick goals. It's going to be really interesting to see if he's able to fight his way into the team this year. You would think if he's not able to, he's going to be delisted. He's pretty lucky to get a 1-year contract for this year, I think. So he kicked 3 goals, 14 disposals, 3 marks, 2 tackles. Goal scoring is not the knock on him. It's what he's doing when he's not kicking goals, which is an interesting proposition. Will Field just continues to work away, 21 disposals, a goal, 4 tackles, 5 clearances, and 4 marks. And Eddie Ford found plenty of the footy. He had 26 disposals and 12 marks. So, look, it's going to be tough to find a spot for any of those players in the Collingwood game just because we've played so well over the last little period. But, they're probably the 3 standouts from a statistical point of view, and then it's whether or not you want to try someone like Logue or Whitlock, like I was mentioning, because, their games are not necessarily going to jump off the page statistically, but we know what they can do in the back half. The only real bit of noteworthy news, I think, from this week is more of the fixtures come out. So we've got essentially up to the second last round fixtured now properly. And our centenary game, it was going to be a different game, but it's been changed to round 17. It's the Thursday, the 3rd of July against the Dogs. It's a surprising marquee slot. We've got a Thursday night game again, which is quite interesting. We've had the Good Friday, we've had a Thursday game against Essendon, and then we've got another against the Dogs to celebrate our centenary. So that'll be a big night. That's probably the one big fixturing that you'd look at and go, that's a nice big win for us, a marquee Channel 7 slot for a night game. So that's Thursday, the 3rd of July, round 17 against the Dogs. But I guess more short term, looking at next week, I spoke about it. It's the Pies. It's our last game before the Pie. Saturday night, the 24th of May, 7:35 game, back at Marvel, under the roof. It is our home game. We have been known to play a home game or two against the Pies, but this is at Marvel, that is, but this is our home game, so hopefully we can hit the second half or hit the end of our first half of the year with some momentum. I think we can't afford to lose momentum and lose morale right before the bye, because we're heading over to Perth for our back-to-back stretch of quote-unquote home games after the bye. So you'd want to go into those, particularly that one against West Coast, with some confidence. You wouldn't want to to lose all of this really good work. We've had a good month of footy. Unfortunately, it's only resulted in 1 win and 1 draw, so we can't afford to lose morale now. I think we'd all accept a loss against the Pies. They're in ripping form, really, really strong form. Since they lost that first game to the Giants in round 0, they've been fantastic. So I wouldn't mind a loss. I think we're all expecting a loss, but it's more around how we lose. I think we need to compete and stay in the game, and hopefully we can do that. I think I spoke about their forward line. It's not that I underestimate the forward line, because it's proven that they can get it done with their mediums and their smalls. It's more around how we set up there. I think in terms of the midfield battle, it's going to be interesting. Do you send someone to Nick Dacos? We haven't really had a tagger or a tagger role this year. We know that Will Field was able to do that pretty well last year, but then got subbed off in the last quarter, and Dacos had a big impact. So a lot of interesting matchups to have a look at. They're pretty mature through the middle part of the ground, but other parts they've got some young players developing. And yeah, I think it should be a super exciting game. So that I think kind of summarizes the game. Like I mentioned before, for me it's more relief. I didn't really allow myself to be too happy about it. It's more relief that we didn't lose, but I guess a small bit of satisfaction that we were able to achieve what we simply had to achieve and get the win. Hopefully we can carry that on into the Collingwood game next week. I think, like I mentioned, it's going to be super important to keep that momentum going. But yeah, that's going to do it for the podcast. Thank you again so much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic week. And as always, go North. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. If you give me a rating or review on your podcast service, that would be much appreciated. And please follow me on all social media at North Pod Show. I'm on X or Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and I'm also very active on the North Melbourne subreddit. Hope you'll join me for the next episode.